She cut hair. That's all anyone knew about Linda Walker. Every morning at the base salon, scissors in hand, small talk about weekend plans. Then 4 Navy SEALs went missing behind enemy lines, surrounded by 50 fighters. And the quiet hairdresser picked up something deadlier than scissors. What happened in the next 6 hours would reveal that some people hide their most dangerous skills in the most ordinary places. Meet Linda Walker. 32 years old, honey blonde hair that she kept in a stylish bob, hazel eyes that seemed to notice everything while appearing to notice nothing, and hands that moved with the precise efficiency of someone who had spent years perfecting their craft. For 3 years, she had been the hairdresser at Forward Operating Base Phoenix, a remote military installation in a mountainous region where American forces maintained a strategic presence. The base salon was small but popular, a place where soldiers could get a decent haircut and a few minutes of normalcy in an otherwise harsh environment. Linda knew everyone. Privates getting their first deployment haircuts, sergeants maintaining regulation standards, officers preparing for promotion photos. She remembered names, asked about families, and provided the kind of conversation that made people feel human again. "Morning, Linda," called Sergeant Mike Torres as he walked into the salon at 0800 hours. "Just a trim today. Got a video call with my daughter tonight." "Absolutely, Sergeant," Linda replied with her characteristic warm smile. "How old is she now?" 8? 9 as of last week, growing up too fast." "They always do," Linda said, guiding him to the chair and draping the cape around his shoulders. "Now, let's make sure you look sharp for that call." As she worked, her scissors moving with practiced precision, the salon door opened again. 4 men in full combat gear walked in, their faces showing the kind of exhaustion that comes from extended operations. "Linda, you got time for the Dream Team?" asked Lieutenant Jake Morrison, leader of SEAL Team 7's Alpha Squad. "For you guys?" "Always," Linda replied. "Give me 15 minutes to finish with Sergeant Torres, then I'm all yours." The 4 SEALs, Morrison, Chief Petty Officer Ryan Blake, Petty Officer First Class Carlos Martinez, and Petty Officer Second Class Tommy Chen, were legendary on the base. They'd conducted over 40 successful missions in the past year, earning a reputation as the most effective special operations team in the region. They were also Linda's favorite customers. Unlike some soldiers who barely acknowledged her existence beyond the haircut, the SEALs treated her like a valued member of the team. They shared stories, asked her opinion, and genuinely seemed to appreciate her company. What they didn't know was that Linda appreciated them for different reasons. She studied their tactics, listened to their mission debriefs, and mentally cataloged every skill they demonstrated. Not out of curiosity, but out of habit from another life. "Heard you guys are heading out on another op tonight," Linda said as she finished Morrison's haircut. "Anything exciting?" "Just a reconnaissance run," Morrison replied casually. "Intel gathering, maybe some surveillance. Should be routine." "Stay safe out there," Linda said, her tone light but her eyes showing genuine concern. "Always do, Linda. Always do." That was the last conversation she had with them before everything changed. At 0237 hours, alarms screamed across FOB Phoenix. Linda woke instantly in her quarters, years of training making her alert before her mind fully processed what was happening. She was dressed and moving toward the command center before the second alarm cycle completed. The base was in chaos, officers running between buildings, communications specialists shouting updates, and a tension in the air that spoke of something catastrophic. Linda slipped into the command center, her hairdresser persona allowing her to move through spaces where civilians normally weren't permitted. Everyone was so focused on the crisis that nobody questioned her presence. "Say again, what's the situation?" Colonel James Peterson, the base commander, was shouting into a radio. "SEAL Team 7 Alpha Squad is down, sir," came the response from an overwatcher in a reconnaissance drone. "They walked into an ambush approximately 40 clicks northeast of the base. Last transmission indicated they were surrounded and taking heavy fire." "How many hostiles?" "Estimated 50 fighters, sir. Heavily armed, well-positioned. The SEALs are pinned down in a valley with no cover and no escape route." Linda felt her blood run cold, but her expression remained neutral. 50 against 4. Those were execution odds, not combat odds. "What about extraction?" Peterson demanded. "Negative, sir. The LZ is too hot. Any helicopter insertion would be shot down before it could land. We've got fast movers on standby, but we can't get close air support without risking the hostages." "Hostages? They've been captured?" "Affirmative, sir. Drone feed shows all 4 SEALs alive but in restraints. Enemy forces have them in the center of their position, using them as human shields against any potential strike." The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. 4 of America's most elite warriors, captured alive by enemy forces who would torture them for intelligence before executing them on camera for propaganda purposes. "Options?" Peterson asked his staff. "We could attempt a ground assault, but we'd need at least 100 soldiers to have any chance against 50 entrenched fighters. Assembly and movement time puts us at 6 hours minimum." "They don't have 6 hours," another officer interjected. "Intelligence intercepts indicate execution is scheduled for sunrise. That's 4 hours from now." "What about a ransom negotiation?" "Sir, these fighters don't negotiate. They execute prisoners. It's what they do." Peterson slammed his fist on the table. "There has to be something we can do. We don't leave our people behind." "Sir," ventured a young intelligence officer, "with all due respect, the mission is impossible. We can't extract them. We can't assault with sufficient force, and we can't negotiate. Those SEALs are already dead. We just haven't admitted it yet." Linda listened to all of this with the carefully neutral expression of a hairdresser who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But inside, calculations were running through her mind with the precision of a computer designed for exactly this kind of problem. 50 fighters, 4 hostages, mountainous terrain, 4 hours until execution. She had faced worse odds before. Have you ever heard a conversation that changed everything you thought you knew about yourself? Sometimes the person you've become isn't who you really are. It's just who you're pretending to be until the moment demands otherwise. Linda quietly left the command center and returned to her quarters. She locked the door, moved to the back of her closet, and pulled aside a panel that nobody knew existed. Behind it was equipment that had no business being in a hairdresser's quarters: a custom-built rifle with a suppressor and night vision scope, tactical clothing in dark colors, combat knives, climbing gear, communications equipment, a go bag that had been packed and ready for 3 years, just waiting for a moment like this, and most importantly, identification that showed her real name and her real occupation before she became Linda Walker, hairdresser. Before she became the person who cut hair and made small talk about weekend plans, she had been Captain Linda Shadow Walker, Special Activities Division, CIA. One of the most effective covert operators in American intelligence, specializing in impossible extractions and high-value target eliminations. She had retired 3 years ago after a mission went wrong. Not because she failed, the target was eliminated successfully, but because she'd been forced to make a choice between following orders and doing what was right, and she'd chosen right over orders. The CIA had given her 2 options: accept reassignment to a desk job in Virginia, or disappear completely with a new identity and never work in the field again. She chose to disappear. Found herself at FOB Phoenix with a cover story as a hairdresser, thinking she could leave her past life behind and just be normal for once. But now 4 good men were going to die unless someone did something impossible, and impossible was Linda Walker's specialty. She changed quickly, the familiar weight of tactical gear feeling like coming home after a long absence. The rifle fit perfectly in her hands, muscle memory from thousands of hours of training making every movement automatic. But she couldn't just walk out of the base in full tactical gear without raising questions. She needed to leave quietly, without anyone knowing she was gone until it was too late to stop her. Linda packed everything into a duffel bag that looked like standard military issue, pulled on a hoodie over her tactical vest, and walked casually toward the base perimeter. She knew the guard rotation schedules, knew which sections had camera coverage, and knew exactly how to exploit the gaps. 20 minutes later, she was outside the wire, moving through the darkness with the silent efficiency of someone who had spent years learning to be invisible. The terrain was treacherous, rocky mountain paths that would break an ankle in the dark. But Linda moved through it like she was walking on flat ground, her night vision equipment turning the landscape into shades of green, her mental map of the region guiding every step. 40 kilometers. In most cases, that would be a 10-hour hike over mountain terrain in the dark. Linda planned to do it in 90 minutes. She ran. Not the casual jog of someone exercising, but the brutal ground-eating pace of someone who had trained for exactly this kind of emergency movement. Her body protested. 3 years of cutting hair hadn't kept her in the same condition as her active duty days. But she pushed through the pain, knowing that 4 men were counting on her, even though they didn't know it yet. At the 30-kilometer mark, she slowed to a tactical pace, knowing she was getting close to enemy territory. The drone feed had placed the SEALs in a valley surrounded by hills, which meant the 50 fighters would have observation posts on the high ground. Linda approached from the west, using terrain masking to stay below sight lines from the hilltops. She moved from shadow to shadow, her dark clothing making her nearly invisible in the pre-dawn darkness. Through her rifle scope, she could see the enemy position. They had set up a perimeter around the valley floor, with the 4 SEALs bound and kneeling in the center. Fighters were positioned in concentric circles, creating overlapping fields of fire that would make any assault suicidal. Professional setup. These weren't random insurgents, they were trained soldiers who knew what they were doing. Linda counted heads. 52 fighters, not 50. Intelligence had underestimated slightly. Not enough to change her plan, but enough to make it more challenging. She found a position on a ridgeline approximately 800 meters from the enemy position. From here, she had clear sight lines to most of their defensive positions, with enough elevation to see over their inner perimeter. Linda set up her rifle with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done this hundreds of times. Bipod deployed, scope adjusted for range and wind, suppressor checked, magazine loaded with match-grade ammunition. She looked through the scope at the 4 SEALs. They were beaten but alive, showing signs of interrogation, but nothing that looked life-threatening. Morrison was talking to one of the guards, probably trying to buy time or gather intelligence. The enemy commander was easy to identify. Older man, better equipment, positioned where he could see everything but protected by multiple layers of guards. He was checking his watch regularly. Sunrise was approaching, and with it, the scheduled execution. Linda's original plan had been to create a diversion, draw off enough fighters to allow the SEALs to escape in the confusion. But looking at the setup, she realized that wouldn't work. These fighters were too disciplined. Any attack would just make them kill the hostages immediately. She needed a different approach, something that would eliminate the threat so completely and so quickly that the enemy wouldn't have time to react. She needed to do what she did best. Linda began identifying targets through her scope. First priority, the enemy commander. Second priority, fighters with crew-served weapons and radios. Third priority, perimeter guards who could sound early warning. She mapped out a sequence. 23 shots to eliminate the command structure and heavy weapons, executed in under 90 seconds while they were still trying to figure out where the shots were coming from. It was an impossible shot sequence. Too many targets, too little time, too much precision required. But impossible was just another word for Tuesday in Linda Walker's previous life. She controlled her breathing, feeling her heart rate slow to the familiar rhythm that marked the difference between a good shooter and a legendary one. Her finger rested lightly on the trigger, not pulling, just waiting for the perfect moment. The enemy commander raised his hand, signaling something to his troops. Execution was about to begin. Linda fired. The suppressed rifle made a sound like someone coughing. 800 meters away, the enemy commander's head snapped back and he dropped instantly. Before his body hit the ground, Linda had already acquired her second target. The fighter standing next to him, trying to process what had just happened. Another shot, another body dropping. The enemy position erupted in chaos. Fighters were shouting, looking around wildly, trying to identify where the shots were coming from. But suppressed rifle fire is nearly impossible to locate, especially in mountain terrain where sound bounces and echoes. Linda worked through her target sequence with mechanical precision, the machine gunner on the eastern perimeter, the radio operator trying to call for reinforcements, the lieutenant attempting to organize a response. 23 shots, 90 seconds, 23 enemy fighters eliminated before they even understood they were under attack. But she wasn't done. The math had changed. 52 fighters minus 23 still left 29 between her and the SEALs. Too many to handle with precision shooting alone. Time to get creative. Linda packed her rifle in moved position, circling around to the northern approach. She'd brought more than just a sniper rifle. The go bag contained tools for exactly this kind of situation. Flashbang grenades, smoke canisters, and one very special piece of equipment that she'd been saving for an emergency. A portable jammer that would disrupt all radio communications within a 2-kilometer radius. She activated the jammer and tossed it into the valley where it would be difficult to locate. Immediately, all the enemy fighters' radios went dead. They couldn't call for reinforcement, couldn't coordinate their response, couldn't do anything but react to immediate threats. Then, Linda became the threat. She moved down from the hills like a ghost, using smoke grenades to create cover and confusion. The remaining 29 fighters were scattered, disorganized, trying to protect the hostages while defending against an unknown number of attackers from an unknown direction. Linda exploited their confusion perfectly. She'd appear from the smoke, eliminate 2 or 3 fighters with precise shots, then disappear before they could respond. The enemy kept firing at shadows, wasting ammunition and revealing their positions. Through it all, the 4 SEALs remained exactly where they were, bound and kneeling, but now watching with professional interest as someone systematically dismantled their captor's defensive position. "Whoever you are," Morrison muttered under his breath, "you're my new favorite person." Linda worked her way closer to the center of the enemy position, eliminating fighters one by one. The smoke was thick now, visibility down to a few meters, perfect conditions for close-quarters combat against a disorganized enemy. She found herself face-to-face with 3 fighters who were guarding the SEALs directly. They saw her emerge from the smoke, raise their weapons, and Linda moved. Years of close combat training took over. She rolled left, avoiding the first burst of automatic fire, came up on one knee, and fired 3 shots in rapid succession, 3 fighters down in under 2 seconds. "Well, that was impressive," observed Ryan Blake, the SEAL's second in command. Linda moved to the SEALs and cut their restraints with her combat knife. "Can you guys move?" "Who are you?" Morrison asked as he grabbed a weapon from a fallen fighter. "Someone who really hates seeing good people die," Linda replied. "We can do introductions later. Right now we need to move. There are still hostiles in the area." "Still hostiles?" Martinez laughed as he armed himself. "Lady, you just took out like 40 fighters single-handedly. How many could possibly be left?" 8 by my count, and they're regrouping near the eastern exit. We need to go west. The 5 of them moved as a unit, the SEALs falling into formation around Linda like she was just another team member. They encountered 2 more enemy fighters trying to organize a counterattack. The SEALs handled them with brutal efficiency. They were a kilometer from the enemy position when the sun finally rose. Linda could see the remaining fighters in the distance, searching for their missing hostages and trying to understand what had just happened. "Okay," Morrison said as they paused to catch their breath. "I need some answers. Who the hell are you, and where did you learn to do that?" Linda smiled, the same warm smile she used in the salon when discussing weekend plans. "My name is Linda Walker. I cut hair at FOB Phoenix." The 4 SEALs stared at her like she'd just spoken in an alien language. "You're our hairdresser," Chen said slowly. "Yes. Our hairdresser just eliminated 50 enemy fighters to rescue us. 52, actually. Intelligence underestimated slightly." Blake started laughing, the kind of laughter that comes from survived impossible situations. "This is insane. We've been getting haircuts from a 1-woman special operations unit for 3 years, and nobody knew?" "That was kind of the point," Linda said. "I was retired. Past tense, until you guys got captured and I couldn't just let you die." "Retired from what?" Morrison asked. "That's classified, or at least it was. I'm guessing my cover is pretty much blown at this point." They made it back to FOB Phoenix as the sun was fully up. The base was still in crisis mode, with officers organizing the rescue operation that Linda had already completed. Colonel Peterson was in the middle of briefing his assault team when someone shouted, "Sir! The SEALs are back. They're at the main gate." Everyone rushed outside to see the 4 captured Navy SEALs walking through the gate, armed and apparently healthy, accompanied by a blonde woman in tactical gear that most people didn't immediately recognize. "That's not possible," someone muttered. They were surrounded by 50 fighters. Peterson approached Morrison. "Lieutenant, what happened? How did you escape?" Morrison gestured to Linda. "We didn't escape, sir. We were rescued. By her." Everyone turned to look at Linda, and slowly recognition dawned on their faces. Is that Linda? Our hairdresser?" "Not just a hairdresser, apparently," Peterson said, his trained eye recognizing military-grade equipment and the bearing of someone with serious combat experience. "Ms. Walker, I think you and I need to have a conversation, a classified one." 3 hours later, Linda sat in a secure conference room with Colonel Peterson, a representative from CIA, and a very confused base intelligence officer. "So let me get this straight," the CIA representative said, reading from a file that had just been delivered via secure courier. "You're Captain Linda Walker, former Special Activities Division, with over 60 successful missions in hostile territory. You were one of our most effective operators before you requested reassignment to inactive status 3 years ago." "That's correct," Linda confirmed. "And you've been working as a hairdresser at this base for 3 years without anyone knowing your real background." "Also correct." "Why didn't you tell us?" Peterson asked. "We could have used someone with your skills." "Because I was done with that life, Colonel. I'd done enough missions, seen enough death, made enough impossible choices. I wanted to be normal for once. Cut hair, have conversations about weekend plans, just exist without constantly looking over my shoulder or calculating kill zones." "What changed?" the CIA representative asked. 4 good men were going to die. Men I knew who had treated me with respect and kindness for 3 years. I couldn't just let them be executed when I had the skills to prevent it. Peterson leaned back in his chair. "You eliminated 52 enemy fighters single-handedly in under 4 hours. That's not just skills, Miss Walker. That's legendary. I did what needed to be done. The question now," the CIA representative said, "is what happens next. You broke cover, revealed your identity, and conducted an unauthorized military operation on foreign soil. Technically, that's a lot of violations." Linda met his eyes steadily. "Are you going to arrest me?" "Arrest you?" "Number. We're going to offer you a choice. You can go back to inactive status with a new identity in a new location, or you can return to active duty. Based on what you just accomplished, I think we both know which option serves the country better." "I choose inactive status," Linda said immediately. The room fell silent. "You're sure?" Peterson asked. "After what you just did, you want to go back to being a hairdresser?" "I want to go back to being normal. What I did last night wasn't who I want to be. It's who I had to be for a few hours to save lives, but that's not my identity anymore." The CIA representative closed his file. "Very well. We'll arrange a new identity and relocation. You'll have to leave FOB Phoenix, of course. Too many people know now." "I understand." As the meeting concluded, Morrison appeared at the door. "Sir, permission to speak with Miss Walker?" Peterson nodded, and Linda stepped outside with the SEAL team leader. "The guys wanted me to thank you," Morrison said. "We owe you our lives." "You don't owe me anything. I'm just glad you're safe. Linda, or whatever your real name is, what you did was incredible. You're a better operator than most of the Special Forces soldiers I've worked with." "I appreciate that, but I'm done being an operator. I just want to cut hair and talk about weekend plans." Morrison smiled. "For what it's worth, you gave a damn good haircut too. Best I ever had. Have you ever accomplished something extraordinary only to realize you'd rather be ordinary? Sometimes our greatest skills are the ones we're most eager to leave behind." 1 week later, Linda Walker disappeared from FOB Phoenix. The official story was that she had been recalled for family emergency. Most people accepted this without question. The four SEALs knew better, but they never talked about what really happened. The mission was classified at the highest levels, the after-action reports were sealed, and the truth about the hairdresser who eliminated 52 enemy fighters remained a secret. But something unexpected happened in the days before Linda left. Word had spread through unofficial channels, not the classified details, but enough for people to understand that their hairdresser had done something extraordinary. Soldiers who had barely acknowledged her before now looked at her with newfound respect. Some wanted to ask questions but didn't know how. Others simply nodded in silent recognition when they passed her. The base commander quietly recommended her for a classified commendation that would never appear in any official record. The CIA representative who had offered her return to active duty left his card with a simple message: "When you're ready to stop pretending." Linda spent her final days at FOB Phoenix doing what she'd always done: cutting hair, making small talk, being normal. But now she understood something she hadn't before. Being normal wasn't about hiding who she was, it was about choosing who she wanted to be. On her last day, the four SEALs came to the salon together, not for haircuts, but to say goodbye. "We're going to miss you," Morrison said, speaking for all of them. "I'll miss you guys too," Linda replied, genuine emotion in her voice. "One question," Blake asked. "When you were cutting our hair all those times, listening to us talk about missions and tactics, were you analyzing us?" Linda smiled. "Every single time. Force of habit. You guys are very good at what you do, by the way." "Not as good as you," Martinez said quietly. "Different skills for different purposes," Linda corrected. "You save people as a team. I used to save people by being alone. Your way is better." Chen handed her a small box. "We wanted you to have this. Something to remember us by." Inside was a SEAL trident pin, the symbol of naval special warfare, but this one had been modified with an engraving on the back. "Shadow, from the Dream Team." "Shadow?" Linda asked. "It's what we're calling you in the classified reports," Morrison explained. "The operators who reviewed your mission footage couldn't believe one person did all that. They said you moved like a shadow." "I prefer Linda," she said, but she kept the pin. 2 months later, in a small town in Montana, a new hair salon opened. The owner was a friendly woman in her early 30s with honey blonde hair and hazel eyes that seemed to notice everything while appearing to notice nothing. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, and she was just a hairdresser. But in a secure facility in Virginia, there was a file with her real identity and a single notation: inactive status, available for recall in case of emergency requiring impossible operations, because some skills never really retire. They just wait quietly, like scissors in a drawer, ready to be picked up again when someone needs cutting. The customers at Sarah's salon in Montana had no idea that the woman cutting their hair had once been one of America's most effective covert operators. They just knew she gave great haircuts, remembered everyone's name, and always asked about their weekends. And that was exactly how Sarah, formerly Linda, formerly Captain Walker, wanted it. Until the next time 4 good people needed someone willing to pick up something deadlier than scissors. If you've ever hidden your most impressive skills because you just wanted to be normal, remember Linda Walker. Sometimes the most extraordinary people are the ones who choose to be ordinary, right up until the moment when extraordinary is exactly what the situation demands. The hairdresser who saved 4 Navy SEALs proved that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one everyone thinks is harmless. And sometimes the person cutting your hair has killed more enemy fighters than most soldiers ever see in combat. But you'll never know unless someone needs saving. And by then, it's already too late for everyone except the people they're protecting. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one. In her new salon in Montana, Sarah Mitchell kept the SEAL trident pin in a locked drawer beneath her station. On quiet evenings after closing, she would sometimes take it out and remember the night she stopped being a hairdresser and became Shadow again. She didn't miss the violence. She didn't miss the constant vigilance or the weight of impossible decisions. But she did miss knowing that her skills could save lives when it mattered most. One day, perhaps, someone would walk into her salon needing more than a haircut. Someone would recognize the way she moved,